ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone. I am Kiana Baker, Director of Community Engagement here at Amplify Louisville, and I am so excited to be partnering with Innovatemap today to bring you all really insightful and informative webinar today, and hopefully you all can take some things from it to integrate into whatever it is that you are working on and building. So we're talking about all things AI today. Make sure you have your pen and your paper. You ready to take notes. A few housekeeping things before we get started, because I really want to allow them to do their intro justice. So I like to give people the opportunity to introduce themselves. I think that it allows you to really see who they are and what they do and all the things. I can read a bio all day, but it typically doesn't do people justice. So before we hop right into it, I'm going to ask that everyone mute themselves. And if you end up coming off mute, just make sure that you put yourself back on mute so that we don't have any interruptions. Also, if you have questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat so they can be answered along the way. And then at the very end, if there are more questions, you can come off mute and ask them if you'd like. I am going to be hopping back on at the end to help with that part. But in the meantime, I'm going to let Katie and Jake take it away so we can optimize our time that we have with them today. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Kiana. So great. We are really excited to be here talking with you all about something that's just in the air right now, AI. We'd love to talk through our perspective on AI and product and hear from you all about questions that are on your mind or how you're working with AI today. So with that, we'll be talking through what you need to know now as you start thinking about your product and what AI could mean for you. So just a quick intro into where we're coming from. So first of all, my name is Katie Lukes. I am a principal here at Innovatemap, and we are a digital product agency. We help companies of all sizes dream, design, and deliver better digital products and experiences. So whether that's someone with a startup with a brand new idea or maybe an existing product that needs to level up, we help with product management, product design, product marketing, and brand to do that. So I run our product research and strategy and also work as a product manager for our clients. And Jake.
Yeah. Hi there, everybody. My name is Jake Ledford. I'm a product designer here at Innovatemap. I've worked with all types of companies across all stages, sizes, industries. And so I'm sure you can trust me when I say a lot of people have expressed interest in AI in the last year. So I'm really excited to share some of our thoughts about what we're seeing and how you can probably incorporate it into your product.
Very good. Okay, so with that, let's dive in. Some things we'll talk about today. So we're going to start off with a sort of an overview about AI generally, and then we're going to dive into product strategy and design strategy, and then we'll have a few takeaways, and then questions at the end. So like Kiana said, please don't hesitate to put your thoughts if this sparks any thoughts for you or issues that you're having or questions in your mind. We'd love to see those in the chat because this is a conversation where you're all coming with different perspectives. And then we can talk about those at the end. Very good. So with that, talk a little bit about why we're here. So we know AI is not new. This is something we've been working with clients for a long time, different AI features. They weren't necessarily calling them AI or thinking of them as AI because it wasn't quite as accepted to use that terminology. It was a little technical, a little difficult to understand, but it's more accessible than ever. And so more companies are talking about it, more companies are thinking about using it as a competitive advantage. It's more powerful. So machine and deep learning are really signifying growth in AI. The large language models are making strides to generate that useful human-like text. Generative AI is hot. So if you are experimenting like we are with ChatGPT, with Claude, with the different, engines out there, AI can create entirely new content, and this is just sparking so many people's imaginations for how they could use this. And then users are accepting it now. So B2C tools can help users understand and embrace AI. Consumers are looking for it. They want to know how you might be using it. And so it's time as product people to be thinking about how to incorporate it responsibly, usefully into our products. And that's what we'll talk about from the product strategy as well as the product design side today. You may be coming from lots of different perspectives. So I want to really recognize that there's a real range of experience with AI in this call. And generally, you might be intrigued by AI and just trying to figure out what to do. You might be wanting to incorporate AI, but you're not sure how. You may be terrified by AI, justifiably so. And you may also be thinking about how to use it, but struggling to articulate its benefits. And you may already be using AI, but you're not sure about what's next. And so all of those perspectives are so valuable here. And we'd love to hear from you about what's on your mind as we talk through these issues. So we at Innovatemap see a future where AI is table stakes. It's implemented in a marketable, valuable, and usable way. Marketable meaning that it's something that your market can understand or are excited about. Valuable in that it makes your users' lives better using your product, and usable in that it's easy to use. So as we talk through these things today, we're going to challenge you to rethink your assumptions about AI, help you understand the impact of AI to your product strategy, and hopefully inspire you to plan and design some valuable AI-driven products. We are not going to talk about the technical aspects of AI, the models, algorithms, security. Unfortunately, that is not our area of expertise. So if you have any questions there, unfortunately, we will be completely useless in answering those. We're also not going to talk about how AI will destroy the world. There are very good reasons to be concerned about some aspects of AI, really good questions that need to be raised there. We will talk a little bit about bias, but of course there's so much more. This will really be a more optimistic conversation about the opportunities for AI. So we'll leave the more risk-based conversation for later. So with that, I will turn it over to Jake to talk about AI as a technology.
Thanks, Kitty. So yeah, one last topic we want to talk about before we dive into product strategy here. Biggest misconception we're seeing right now about AI. AI is a technology, not a feature. So no one brags about using JavaScript in their product. You'll see this as a theme throughout the rest of the presentation, but ultimately your buyers and users aren't going to care what your product is using. What they're primarily going to care about is whether or not you're solving their problems and addressing their pain points. So again, something we just wanted to highlight as we go through the rest of the presentation here. Currently, we are here. So I'm sure you all remember back in 2008 when the iPhone was first released, everybody started developing just really cool apps that, well, maybe they didn't have a whole lot of real use functionality, really demonstrated what the technology at the time was capable of. And so currently when it comes to AI, I think we're still at this point. Lots of people are still navigating the landscape and laying down the foundation for how AI is going to be incorporated into a lot of our products in the future. So I think in the coming years, we'll start to see a more general direction of how people are going to be using this. But take a lot of the things right now you're saying with a caveat, as again, we're still in this stage of development in AI. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of apps right now have incorporating AI. And so a lot of them have really just been reskinned chat GPTs, just chatbots with some cool functionality. But again, is this necessarily solving users' problems? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So these are a lot of the questions we want to be thinking about as we are incorporating AI into our products. We want you to consider two sort of axes as we go throughout this presentation. And they can be laid out in two ways. So how loudly are people talking about AI? So you can have more like hidden AI features where companies and businesses aren't really talking about their AI at all. And then you have more AI forward ones where that's their entire business. And then on the y-axis here, what's the mix of AI enhancements to core features that we're seeing? So when thinking about a ratio, are there going to be a lot of AI enhancements, or is it just going to be more non-AI enhanced features? And we've built out a graph here to show what some of those companies might look like. So on one extreme, we have OpenAI, where their entire business model is AI centered. So they talk about it in their language. It's all in the product. But then something on the other end, you might have something like Amazon, where they might have a lot of AI enhancements underneath the hood, but aren't outwardly talking about it. So just establishing some shared language. So as we go through this presentation, we can be on the same page about things. So with that, I'll pass it off to Katie to talk about product strategy.
Yeah. Okay. So here we're going to talk about, things that you might be thinking about when you are considering how to effectively incorporate AI into your digital product. And we'll cover it in three main topics here. How do you pick the right problems to tackle with AI? How do you choose the right depth with which to tackle them? And a word of caution around bias. So starting with picking the right problems, the question here is, which problems are appropriate for AI solutions? So we can work backwards here. One statistic that was really interesting to me in this article by Aniket Deostali from Walmart is the unfortunate reality is that 85% of enterprise big data and AI projects fail. And it's not because they can't figure out how to, the technology itself, how to use the technology. The issue is figuring out how to apply AI in the right situations at the right time and the right channels. And this is where product management comes into play, and really figuring out where to apply these technologies in the right place. So we always advocate for sticking with the fundamentals. Consider the people and what their problems are. Know what matters to them by talking to them, and then craft the right experience around that. So with that, if you think about your users and the people who are using your products, you might think about what AI is good at. So AI can do things like analyze huge amounts of data, find patterns, optimize resources, automate tasks, understand language, adapt and simulate, and now generate new content. And there are things that AI is really great at because it can do those things. So it can synthesize large amounts of information really well. So on the user research side, when I do user research, I'm using AI tools to synthesize what's in those transcripts and conversations, summarizing, translating from one form to another. So if you think about some of those image generation tools, they are translating your words into images. Synthesizing large data sets, generating new ideas, solving truly complex problems, and predicting patterns. At the same time, there are things that AI is very bad at. So AI cannot make intuitive judgments, understand new situations, consider right and wrong, understand causality, predict human behavior, handle ambiguity, understand personal emotions, and really the most important one on the list is understand what's true. And so there's some things that we should not use AI for. Things that are around ethics and bias, moral reasoning, common sense, emotional intelligence, cultural and societal nuances, and high-stake factual use cases. So in short, anything that requires human ingenuity, abstract reasoning, and intuition. So as a product person, as you're looking at your use cases and how your users use your products, how can you differentiate between these? How can you figure out which things are right to apply an AI tool to versus not? So we have some thoughts here. If you think about those problems, thinking about what would be a welcome delight to the user, what would improve their outcomes, and what would be appropriate for AI to solve. And we've got 4 categories of user problems where AI can be extremely useful. One is tediousness, so anything that is very repetitive, boring, or manual. Confusion, where there's overwhelming or unfamiliar choice. Unfamiliarity, where there's technical knowledge or jargon needed by the user to figure out how to use your product. And the purely impossible, so where there's too much data for humans to even process in a timely way. So we're going to talk about each of these 4 in turn. When we talk about tediousness, and those really repetitive, boring tasks that in our software today, our users may be doing in a manual way. What are some tasks that are a drag on their time and attention, that are very tactical, kind of ticky-tacky things where an AI could automate them, and that person could then spend their time on more strategic, higher level thinking things where an AI would not be helpful? So a few examples here are Expensify, that does expense receipt auditing and also does some like fraud prevention. Those are things that, again, very tedious to type in all of your expenses and all of that. If there's an AI way to like read my receipt, put it in the right category, send it off, that saves me a lot of time that I could be doing other things with. Grammarly with copy editing, again, like is something that takes a lot of time and attention and is very easy to get wrong. It's hard for a human to pay attention through maybe a whole document of text to do copy editing, where a tool like Grammarly can handle it very quickly and catch everything. And finally, Walmart does grocery list building. I find grocery lists extremely tedious. And so this is something they're experimenting with a chat tool with text, with mobile text, where people could build their grocery list by just having a conversation with a Walmart bot. Confusion, so where there's overwhelming or unfamiliar choice. So in this, think about for your users, where are they faced with a blank page problem? So when I say that, I mean where they have a blank canvas of things they might need to do. So if you think about a tool like Canva, where you can create graphics, if you just gave me a blank canvas and all these like visual tools to use, I might be very confused and have trouble getting started. That's the blank page problem. So how can we use AI to get at what the user wants to do and help give them a jump start? Where is there more choice than they want to process? Where do they lack the specialized knowledge to make good choices? So examples here. Stitch Fix is a personalized helper to help you find clothes, and they'll send you, 5 choices in a month, and you see if you like it. Well, how do they decide what to send you? They use AI to analyze your shopping habits and things that you like to send you just the right things. And this is where there's that blank page problem. Like, it's overwhelming to be able to have to walk into a store and figure out what you like. Wouldn't it be nice if someone like Stitch Fix could serve you up exactly what is something that you know you're going to love? Hulu and Netflix and TikTok do this all the time behind the scenes. They are coming through huge amounts of choices in entertainment and giving you just the things that you have shown with your behavior that you like. And Fitness AI is a training app that will build a training plan for you because, for me, I lack the specialized knowledge to do that. I know what I am like and where I am in my fitness, but I don't have the specialized knowledge to know what to do to build a training plan like that. And so Fitness AI can do that for me. Unfamiliarity. So where do your users need to follow complex processes to get information they need? And when do they need specialized language or knowledge to find information? So for this one, think about the bridge between where your users are and their mindset and the thing that they're trying to achieve. Where is that bridge really hard to cross because they don't know the language or they need some special technical knowledge? So for example, Zendesk offers tools around some technical documentation, so where you can ask something in a chat, that chat bot will provide that bridge. It'll say, this is what you want. It'll serve up then what you need. Rather than you having to know the words that are in that documentation and do a search, the chat bot can help you make that translation. Information search does this all the time. So Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant, you speak what you want. It does the translation, and it does the combing through the worlds of information and serves you up what you need or what you've asked for. And Magnify is an example from the investing world. So investment has very specialized language. It's intentionally kept a little vague and opaque and hard to understand. So Magnify provides that bridge by allowing you to ask questions like, how can I invest this $1,000 that I have? What is the difference between a mutual fund and an ETF? And then Magnify will serve you back that information that you're asking for about investment and help make recommendations based on what you are asking for. And finally, impossibility, and this is a big category. So where is there too much data for humans to process? So again, thinking about your own products, what problems are being solved inadequately or slowly because there's too much data for humans to process? And a really good example here is American Express, which uses AI for credit card detection. So if humans were the ones combing through all those transactions, it would take a long time and be very imperfect around where they actually found instances of fraud. But the AI can do that really easily and more accurately. Native is a company that uses customer reviews around consumer products to tell the companies who have those products about what the public thinks about them. Again, it would take humans too many years and too much time to go through all of the customer review information. Native can consume that and serve up those insights to the consumer product companies so that they can make real and timely business decisions around those. And Atomwise is a company that does drug discovery. So all that world of compounds and molecules out there that, again, would take a lot of trial and error to find good combinations for. Atomwise can serve up different ideas for drugs that then the humans can take and do the research on. So to review, what types of problems should we be looking for in an AI context? The ones that are tedious, where you need to free up time for your users so that they can be more strategic. You might use automation or synthesis to do that. Look for the tasks that are confusing, where your users need inspiration or a jump start. Here's where you can serve them up recommendations. Where they have unfamiliar tasks. So where does technical know-how or jargon get in the way of them achieving their outcomes? Here you might use natural language processing or translation in order to get them to where they need to go more easily. And those impossible tasks where there's just too much data for the human to consume. This is where you might be using pattern recognition or automation. So choosing the right depth. So let's say you've picked the right problems. The question then is, are you augmenting how you solve them or are you automating? Here's what I mean by that. So there's a range of ways that AI can be implemented in features and products. And so the question then is, how much of the work is the AI doing? And so we've created this dynamic here where you can see what that range looks like. So at the bottom, we have where AI is just augmenting how humans are using your product. So an example here is Miro, where AI is handling simple tasks. It's just augmenting. So I don't know if any of you use Miro. It's a Canvas, like whiteboarding kind of tool. It's really helpful in workshops and things like that, online collaboration. And Miro has an AI feature where if you put a bunch of Post-its on a board, their AI feature will theme them and separate them out into different topics for you. So it's not creating the Post-its, it's not giving you the ideas, it's just taking what you have and making your job just a little bit easier. The next step up toward automation is Waze. So Waze is the online map tool that recommends your directions for you. And this is where AI is working alongside you. So I'm driving the car. I have full control over where we're going, but AI is almost like my driving assistant, and Waze is my driving assistant, and it's just telling me, you actually don't want to go that way because there is construction, and it's helping me every step along the way. And the next step up is where AI is the foundation of the interaction. So with TikTok, it's working behind the scenes. I don't see it. I don't necessarily know it's there, but it's what is serving up every bit of my interaction with TikTok. And finally, all the way up in automation, we have something like automated cars, where they have an automated driver that's taking over the decisions and actions for you completely. In theory, the human has no choices they're making, no action they're taking. The AI is completely taking over that complete interaction. And an important thing to remember here is, as you decide how much the AI is doing for your users, is that the more you automate, the more you're requiring your users to trust the AI. So if you are working with a product where that might be difficult, maybe you just want to augment their tasks with AI and let them do more of it. And so let me give a couple of examples here. So you should augment your user's task with AI when people enjoy the task. For example, if I'm using Netflix, I kind of like browsing through all the options. I do want the recommendations, but I like looking at everything. So I want some of that choice. I want control over that choice along with the recommendation. So when people enjoy the task, don't take that away from them, just help them out. You want to just augment when personal responsibility for the outcome is required or important. So, and where the stakes of the situation are high. So here an example might be, I don't mind if my doctor uses AI to help diagnose or think of treatment options, but it's really important to me that the doctor themselves is making the judgment. And so here I really just want the doctor to be helped by AI. I don't want it to be taking over their job. Where specific preferences are hard to communicate or where strategic input is needed. Those are where you're just helping the human do their job better. Where should you automate? So you want to automate activities when people lack the knowledge or ability to do the task. This is where fraud detection comes into play. Humans don't have the ability to perform that task in a timely way. So that's where it's great to automate that task fully. Where tasks are boring, repetitive, awkward, or dangerous. And so here there's some like data entry tasks that might be repetitive, some data migration, or you can even think of like remote inspections of mines. Here you don't want a human to be involved in that because it's dangerous for them. And so it's good to fully automate that task. All right, so we'll wrap up the product strategy conversation with a word of caution around bias. And this is something that is, I think, top of mind for most of us as we're thinking about AI's weaknesses. So knowing that it is a weakness, how can we plan for it? So AI is built on human-generated data. So it is inherently flawed and biased. So how can we help avoid encoding that bias into our AI features and products? So two types I'll talk about here. Algorithmic bias. This is where algorithms were trained on biased data. And then societal bias, where assumptions or norms create blind spots in the data. So some examples. Algorithmic bias. This is from a tweet about a tool, if you remember, I think it was maybe like 2-3 years ago. Someone put out this tool that could take your picture, you submit your picture to it, and it would serve you back a piece of art that looks like you. Amazing, like really incredible and kind of groundbreaking at the time. Worked great if you had a white face. And if you had anything other than a white face, it did not work for you. And it served you back art that was of white people. And it's because they trained that tool on European art databases. They used biased data. They didn't have a full set of data for that tool to really be useful to the full market of people who would want to use it. So although they didn't go into it trying to build a tool that was inherently racist to the people who wanted to use it, that is what they did, because they didn't fully think about their data. And societal bias is where there's assumptions or norms that are built into the data. So this is kind of a subtle difference, where the example here is where Amazon created a recruiting tool. So Amazon hires a lot of people, and they've had a long history of hiring very smart, capable people. So they thought, we've got a lot of data. We'll create a recruiting tool that can look at a resume and say instantly, this is someone we should talk to more versus, this is not a good fit for us. So they built this tool, and they found that it was kicking women out of the recruiting pool because their data over time was mostly men. And so they had hired a lot of men over time. And so the tool learned, oh, good employees are men. And so when it would find a female candidate, it said, that's not a good candidate. And so to Amazon's credit, they figured out that was a problem, and they stopped using that tool. So knowing all of that, and knowing that our data is just built on some incorrect assumptions over time, some societal bias over time, how can we be smart about how we're training tools that are using that data? The first step is something we should all be doing anyway, which is creating diverse, curious teams. If you have people who come from different backgrounds, who have different points of view, different life experiences, they'll be able to ask better questions and identify some of the gaps. Identify potential biases early in the process. So when you are planning these tools, put on the black hat. Think of everything that could go wrong. It's okay to talk about those things early and often, because then you can plan for them. Interrogate the data sources. Really look at your data and poke for where you might have holes. Establish requirements for mitigating bias early. So that should be part of your success criteria early on in this process, is making sure that you're mitigating bias. And when you're testing, test with a wide variety of people, and do not skimp on that testing with historically underrepresented groups, because again, you might be surprised by what you learn in that testing. With that, let me pass it over to Jake to talk about design.
Thanks, Katie. And great content, by the way. I think that transitions really well into what we'll be talking about in this section. So yeah, as we talk about design strategy, I'm really excited to show you guys some of our thoughts on this. If you're like me, one of my biggest pet peeves is when I go online to a source like LinkedIn or Twitter, or maybe some other place where people are talking about AI, because I want to learn about it. A lot of the things on there are really vague or high level, or just don't have any like pragmatic application to what I'm working on. Which is all right, but if you're like me, again, when we want to build things, we want to have good practical use cases for things. And so I was really frustrated when I was reading online a lot of things that weren't giving me that practical use case that I was looking for. So I did what any person like me would have done, and I went and figured it out myself. And so I'm really excited to share what we've put together for you guys. So as we get into this, we're going to be talking about mainly the type of AI enhancements that exist. So we'll show you the examples of those, and then we'll show real life practical ways of how those could be implemented. And so hopefully that can inspire you to think about different ways that you can incorporate AI into your product. And so as we're going through these, again, I would love for you guys to think about and then hopefully have discussions later about how you can incorporate AI into practical ways into your product. So starting here with the types of AI enhancements, we're going to be going over 7 different enhancements: generation, suggestion, curation, prediction and extrapolation, analysis and summarization, recognition, and then lastly, task execution. These aren't by any means like formal research, like a gathering of like formal items. We just did a landscaping of all the types of AI enhancements out there, and we've bucketed these into these different segments, which we think are pretty spot on to what exists today. I wanted to note task execution there because I think that one in particular is special, and we'll get to that one later. And throughout all these, we're going to be considering three main things. So what are the capabilities of each of these? So what can it do? The constraints. So where is it maybe not the best at solving a particular problem? And then lastly, clarity, which I think is really important and I want to highlight. Clarity when it comes to AI enhancements is particularly important because we want to provide that transparency of how the AI is working. I would say for the majority of use cases, providing additional transparency on what's happening under the hood can only provide users a benefit when it comes to making decisions or just knowing what information is available to them. So let's get into them. The first one we have here is generation. So generation, of course, is probably the most popular of the 7 of these. The biggest reason why is that AI has kind of exploded in the last year or so is because of how magical generation has been. And so generation is utilizing data sets to generate new words, images, sounds. You can think of things like ChatGPT, Midjourney, Claude, all of those ones that that have been providing that wow factor in the news lately. The biggest constraint around generation is correctness and accuracy in the fine detail. And so whether or not you're generating a picture of the Pope and he's wearing some really cool new Gucci drip, might look really cool from afar, but as soon as you get up close, you might realize that he has like 6 fingers or something, you know? So that's what we mean by correctness and accuracy in the fine details. Likewise, you might have ChatGPT generate a new blog article for you. From afar, it might look really good, but with closer inspection, you might see that it's not SEO optimized. So again, where AI is right now, it's still a lot of muddy when it comes to the fine details there. And then so we really want to ask ourselves, what can we do about this inaccuracy? That can be do things like garnering user feedback. So having prompts like, was this the answer you were expecting? Giving people the ability to like or dislike certain prompts, etc. We want to talk about magic, the level of magic and user input. I think it's a great thing to consider with each one of these enhancements. So again, with magic, how much wow factor does it have? And then user input, like how much effort does it require from me as a user to get this feature running? So when it comes to generation, it has a lot of magic, you know? So generating new sounds, images, words is really, really great. But there's a lot of user input when it comes to it. So when you hear terms like prompt engineering, a lot of communities right now are focusing on prompt engineering because it's a high level user input to get what exactly I want out of these particular generative features. As we talked about earlier, a lot of people are just slapping AI onto their products right now. A lot of people have just been doing generation, but as we've been talking about, there's going to be a lot more different kinds of types of enhancements that can be utilized. And so as we go through the rest of these, I would really want to emphasize that you take these into considerations when thinking about your own product. Suggestion is our second type of AI enhancement here. So this utilizes data sets to suggest actions for the user to take. The biggest constraint here is subjectivity. So the AI is going to be making assumptions about the data set that it has provided to it. So it's going to be looking at my previous patterns, interactions, and histories. And based on that, it's going to provide an example action that I can take. But again, that's all subjective. And so when thinking about clarity, how might we be able to alleviate this subjectivity? I really want to pull up this example here that we have because I think it's really highlights the importance of clarity when thinking about designing for AI. So I'll zoom in on this picture here. So this is just a screenshot of Slack. And you can see the Slack bot says this week, Innovatemap averaged X message per day. Meanwhile, I found a few channels you rarely use. It might be time to say goodbye. So it's great. It's suggesting some actions for me to take. The biggest thing here is that it's not really clear to me how these options are being presented to me. So again, the message says, I found a few channels you rarely use. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I don't message in it very often? I don't open it very often? I don't react to it very often? I'm not quite sure how it's deriving these choices for me. And because of that, I'm unable to make a decision about whether or not I actually want to leave these channels. So I hope this example provides a bit more clarity about why adding in transparency about how your AI is working to the UI here is really important to help users make informed decisions. In this case, suggestion, I'd say it has a medium level of magic. I think depending on the types of suggestions that are being made, it can be very magical. Maybe it's something like a really powerful insight in an analytics tool. I can imagine that being very magical. And the great part about this is there's very low user input. The next type of AI enhancement we have is curation. So this utilizes data sets to present curated content to the user. The biggest example of this has been, TikTok, Instagram, social media, Netflix. This, I think, is a really good one to highlight when it comes to talking about how AI has improved over the years. 5 years ago, we weren't really talking about social media algorithms as much as we are today. That's because social media algorithms have become so strong in the last couple of years. And that's mainly because of the giant leaps that have been happening in AI. The main constraint of this, though, is it only improves with continuous user input. So when we think about alleviating the lack of user input, that's kind of a big challenge we want to jump over. And so what do I mean by that? So let's take Twitter, for example, or X, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it Twitter for namesake. So when I first log onto Twitter, I'm not really going to have anything in my curated feed versus somebody who has been using Twitter for years. They're going to have a really curated feed that tailors to exactly the types of things that they're interested in. So as a new user, it's really hard for me to get access to the types of content that I want without a lot of additional without a lot of interaction with the product. So how does Twitter alleviate this initial barrier? So when you first sign up for Twitter, it actually has you tell the platform about things you're interested in. So maybe you're interested in basketball, maybe you're interested in movies, and then it'll give you a list of people to follow. So maybe, LeBron James, Steph Curry, some movie stars, The Rock. That way it can start building that curated feed for you already. And then that way that barrier to entry is a lot less. And then, of course, the magic here is pretty low. I'd say, I wouldn't say that using a TikTok feed is very magical. And the user input is also maybe medium to low, depending on how often I need to like or favorite or comment on things to really get the algorithm tailored to my needs. The fourth enhancement we have here is prediction extrapolation. So this utilizes data sets to predict shortcuts, future data, forecasts. And the biggest constraint here is patterns may be temporary. So you can see here in this example, Apple CarPlay. If I am somebody who frequents Starbucks a lot, on the CarPlay home here, it's going to suggest Starbucks as a quick action for me so that I don't have to go in and type it in. Instead, it'll just surface that up to the front for me. But as we just said, this pattern might be temporary. So maybe I don't want to go to Starbucks that day. So in that case, this shortcut here is completely useless to me. In this case, it's not really solving my problem. So when thinking about clarity, how can we alleviate changing patterns? Again, a medium level of magic here, and I'd say pretty low user input as well. Our next enhancement, analysis and summarization, utilizes data sets to provide high-level detail about content. So similar to suggestion, I think the biggest constraint here is just subjectivity and varying degrees of summarization. So in this example that we have here of Grammarly is I've inputted a paragraph and is providing me some information about that paragraph about, the level of correctness, the clarity, engagement, and delivery. The biggest constraint here, though, as we just talked about, is for different users, they might want different levels of summarization. So for somebody, this might be the perfect level of summarization. So I get all the information that I need out of this. But for a different user, though, I really might want a more detailed level of summarization. So, what about it is unclear, or what about it is a bit bland. So, this really ties back to what Katie was talking about the fundamentals. A product is really knowing your user. And when you really know your user, you're able to provide the exact level of features to their needs in this case. And then again, the magic here, I'd say it's on the higher side because I think, depending on the level of analysis that you can provide, it can be really helpful for users. And then likewise, the level of user input here is medium, mainly because I actually have to give it content to summarize. Moving on to our second to last enhancement here, recognition. So this utilizes data sets to perceive text, images, etc. Biggest constraint is just accuracy. So in this example, Photos app in the iPhone, you can see here, shout out to my sister's dog. But when I type in dog, I would expect as a user that pictures of dogs would come up. And then you can even see here in the example, it's even suggesting poodle dog too, because it's recognizing that there's a golden doodle in those. And so this one, I would say, has a lower level of magic and user input, mainly because this type of enhancement has been around for a while. I think this is something that most people are familiar with, so it doesn't really provide that wow factor that maybe used to. And then so again, clarity, how might we correct for inaccuracy here? So you'll see a lot of products do like how confident they are about certain items. So in this case, like here's a picture of a dog. We're 95% certain it's a dog. So that's how people have alleviated or added additional clarity into the use case here. And so moving on to our last type of enhancement, task execution. And so, as I was saying earlier, I think task execution is a bit of a special enhancement, mainly because it's very specific to your product. So what do I mean by that? So it utilizes data sets and to perform actions unique to individual products. And so the biggest constraint is the product and the models within the product itself. So as Katie was touching on earlier with the example of Miro, when I write out 24 stickies on Miro and I wanted to organize those stickies for me, it can do that, but that's something very specific to Miro, right? I wouldn't expect like a different app like Notion or Slack to like organize stickies for me because those aren't objects that exist in those platforms. So when we talk about task execution, we talk about that automating or augmentation of specific tasks that are unique to my product. And so the biggest example, or an example that we have here is Figma's new feature released in FigJam. So you can see here that I can generate custom templates and things that will help me with my various workshops or meetings, etc. You can see here on the right that it's generating custom sticky notes and boards. These are all unique to this particular product, so therefore, like no other product can do it. So really wanted to provide some additional information here. And so the biggest point of clarity is how do users know what commands are available to them? Again, I'll go back to this example. You can see down here, right above the generate button, FigJam in this case is providing examples for what a user could input as a part of this generation process. So maybe they want to create an agenda or add in a section for next steps. They're suggesting things to add additional transparency about ways that they can utilize the product. And I would say, like, even though we have magic and user input listed here, I'd say like both of these are like really up to your individual product. If you're going for something like very simple, very easy to use, and very streamlined, it might be able to solve the problem, but the level of magic and user input might be a bit lower simply because of the nature of your product. Maybe if you have a very complex high-end analytics like sales tool, maybe there's a lot more that could be utilized throughout the product. And so there's a lot more object manipulation that the AI can do. And so maybe there's a little bit more level of magic there that can happen. Great. So we went through all those types of enhancements. What can you do with it? So what we're going to do is we are going to show examples of Slack. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Slack. we're going to show an example of each one of those 7 enhancements, what it might look like in Slack. And so hopefully by the end of this, you can take a look at your own product and have a better understanding or idea of like ways that you might be able to incorporate AI into your product. So let's get into it. So I'll play each of these a couple of times, but for generation, I'm sure you can imagine, wouldn't it be great if I type a message into Slack and with the click of a button, it can rewrite whatever I wrote into the text field here into something better, into something maybe more engaging. So again, I'll let it play here again, but you can see it's going to take what I gave it and then it's going to generate something new out of it. So it's generating new text, ideally in a better way. And so again, at the end of the day, the use cases here should be utilized to solve a user's problem, not just to say that we have AI in the product. Our next enhancement here, is suggestion. So in this example, you can see I've received a toast notification from Slack saying that most people in my general channel are talking about food. And then it's going to suggest to me would I like to create a foodies channel. So again, it's taking previous interactions that I've made to the product. In this case, it's kind of sifting through all the messages and then going to make a suggestion to me based on what it sees in the messages. Next, we have curation. So I'm sure you can imagine, wouldn't it be great if Slack has something like a For You page where, based on the types of messages that I interact with, it can suggest to me some great posts or messages that it thinks that I might like. So again, it's just curating items for me without me having to do anything. Prediction and extrapolation. So you can see here in this example, I've received a message. I have several messages in my product design channel that looks like they might need responding to. Would I like to view them? So maybe it understands that I like to go in that channel a lot to message or respond to things. And it's noticed that I haven't been doing that lately. So in this case, it's gonna predict that I want to do that and then provide it here as an option for me. And while we're on this topic, I actually want to bring out a note that even though we've been talking about these 7 enhancements individually, a lot of them can have overlap. I would say most features don't just have one type of enhancement, rather it's a mix of them. So I'm sure you've seen some of that in these examples we provided as well. Analysis and summarization. So wouldn't it be great if I, with the click of a button, had the ability to summarize my entire Slack channel in a single digest? And so that's the example we've created here. Let it play one more time. And then second to last one, would it be cool when I search for an item in Slack, it's going to provide me with exactly what I search for. So currently in Slack today, if I were to search for a string of text, it's only going to return that exact string of text. So if I were to search like pink, for example, it's only going to return strings of text that contain pink. But wouldn't it be great if it could actually recognize like items or images that contain pink in it, and then it would return it. And so this is pretty familiar. Again, like this is how Google Images operates, and a lot of other recognition features work as well. And then our last item here, task execution. So again, task execution, think about what's something unique to Slack that only Slack can do. So you can see here in this dialog, users have the ability to just type in with natural language, send a weekly digest to all my client channels. And just like that, Slack will do it. But again, when thinking about clarity, you can see here, we've listed out other options that users could take so that they know what types of options are available to them. So things like archiving unused channels or showing a list of teammates they don't get to talk to very often. But again, wanting to reemphasize that the sky really is the limit here when it comes to task execution. So I think doing a lot of brainstorming on this would be really important. So that brings us to our takeaways. Yeah. I'll pass it back off to Katie. Thank you guys for going over that.
And honestly, in the interest of time, I'm just going to skip this because I know we'll be sending out a roll-up PDF of all of this, and really just throw it back over to Kiana to talk about questions.
Awesome. So I didn't see any questions in the chat. If there's anyone on here who has any specific questions right now, please feel free to take yourself off mute if you'd like to, or throw it in the chat if that makes you feel more comfortable. So we'll wait a few seconds to see if you all have any questions, but I will say that I'm very appreciative of this. This was very helpful, especially seeing like the example at the end that you used with Slack, but also having the different lenses of how to incorporate AI and what you should be thinking about and the problems that it should be solving for your customer. That was extremely helpful, especially because right now I think that there's this ideal that everyone has to have AI. So people are just kind of slapping anything on their product so that they can say they're using it. So this allowed me to think more intentionally about how to utilize AI. So does anyone joining us have any questions before we?
I have a quick question. It may be a little bit inappropriate, but there's AI to edit videos and that type of thing. And I was about to use one of those. And then I was like, well, how safe is it for me to upload my video to some random app or whatever? And what happens if, it gets destroyed or whatever? So what type of, not security, but what do we have to ensure that these AI places are safe for us to use and upload, raw data that, we only have in one place?
It's such a good example. And so I wouldn't be able to speak to the technical ways we can do that, but I think what you're highlighting is a really important piece on that. Those stairs of like the augment versus automate and requiring trust, right? Like they didn't make you feel like you were safe to use that tool. And so you couldn't trust it with, your important data. And so what I think about in terms of that question is, what can I do as a product manager to make my users feel safe? So what could they have done in their product to reassure you that you were going to be okay in trusting them with that data? What maybe it could just be like text that tells you what they're going to do with it or what will happen or who has access to it. It could be just being more transparent with maybe how other people are using it. But there's different ways from a user experience point of view that they should be building in there to build your trust in that tool. And it sounds like they did not do that sufficiently yet.
Yeah, that's a great point, because to your point, there was no like, oh, if I upload my video, it'll just be a copy of it and we'll have your original and we'll just slice it into pieces and we'll still keep your original and we'll create, 10 additional bite-sized pieces of your original video. So correct, there was nothing like that. So I guess from a user experience, that's a good suggestion for anybody who wants to use AI to make sure that there's this level of trust for the actual user.
100%. And like exactly what you just said is what they should do. They should be transparent about what's going to happen with that data. That's exactly, you should send them that exact suggestion.
Anyone else? Awesome. Well, this has been great. To everyone who joined us today, there will be a copy of this on the Amplify Louisville YouTube channel. So if you want to come back and reference any of it, that should be up no later than the end of this week. And I'll try to remember to send out a link to everyone who joined as well. And also please check your email, because you should have received an email yesterday that had 2 attachments to it. But if you did not, or if you don't want to filter through the inbox, if yours looks anything like mine, Chelsea has also put those 2 items in the chat. If you want to snag them before we hop off of here, I'll make sure to keep this open for a minute or 2 afterwards so that you have time to download both of those items. Thank you all so much for sharing your knowledge with us. This was amazing. And I hope that we have the opportunity to partner for many times in the future to continue to share all this knowledge with the founders here today. We do have more webinars planned and ready for you all. So make sure that you are following Amplify Louisville on all of our social channels, as well as keeping up with us in our events tab on our website. Make sure that you are keeping up with Innovatemap. Make sure that you are connecting via LinkedIn. I will have all of their information linked in the follow-up email so that you can easily connect via LinkedIn, go to the Innovatemap